So let's jump into the pedagogy and the how we teach aspect of this. So we're looking at methodologies that really support the constructionist learning theory of kids in the classroom, which we've already covered. So thinking about a couple of these, we've got project-based and problem-based learning, which here in the United States, we just say PBL all the time. That's our favorite thing to say. And it's not always clear what that means. So for this and for moving forward in this class, we'll be using the whole word project-based learning or problem-based learning, just to be clear. So I'll try not to do my American shortcut, which I always do. But so in both of these project-based and problem-based learnings, they both focus on open-ended questions or tasks. They provide authentic applications of content and of skills. So any of those skills that we were talking about last module, or really any content a project-based or problem-based learning unit can be put into. Really think about those 21st century skills. What else are we learning besides the technology and the content? We're learning about collaboration, problem solving, artistic expression, and those types of things. And both project and problem emphasize student independence and inquiry. And they are much longer and more multifaceted than traditional lessons or assignments, which I really think is the scariest part of problem and project-based learning, is it takes time. It takes a lot of time in the classroom. As we talked about when we talked about the engineering design process and how there are all these different ways of approaching the engineering design process, but they're all kind of secular. The same can be said for kind of project-based learning. There's a lot of content out there, and a lot of institutions and organizations and even schools approach project-based learning in a little bit different methodology. But they all share the same thing of being student-led, student-centered, and providing opportunities for students to learn through inquiry. So these are just some snapshots I got on the internet when I was just doing a search for project-based learning framework, and I got a couple different ones. There's a lot out there, but I just picked some of the more clear ones. And depending on what you do with your classroom or what your school does with project-based learning or wherever you are, there is a framework that can work for you. So look at them all out. Check them all out. There's some in our asynchronous content links that will be on the website, so you can look more deeper into these, especially these three that I pulled out because I find them very interesting. And you'll notice that something that kind of brings them all together, or they all include, is a student voice or student choice, something that students pick and plan. Something else that project, here's another one I found as well. Something else that project-based learning does is it really focuses on completing a project or creating a final product over an extended period. It's building towards that end. It involves real-world relevance, driving questions, and multidisciplinary integration. Really, the best project-based learning involves more than one discipline. Encourages students to apply knowledge collaboratively. So most of these project-based learnings, well, they're defined as group work, often ending in a presentation, display, or object. Now let's talk about problem-based learning. So problem-based learning is not that different than project-based learning, but it's kind of more specific. It actually starts with an open-ended problem. It's really focused on the problem part of the assignment and not really the project part of the assignment. It emphasizes research, problem-solving skills, and critical thinking, as does project-based learnings. So students need to identify what they need to learn to address the problem, then research and apply in their findings. And that's a little bit different than what we see in most of the project-based learning. And problem-based learning is generally considered a subset of project-based learning because it also, if it includes a project at the end but a problem at the beginning, then it can be problem-based learning, kind of embedded in project-based learning. So thinking about these two PBLs, as I would say, and what their differences are, I put together this little chart to kind of keep our focus. So the focus of the project-based learning is really the artifact or finality of the project itself. And the focus of the problem-based learning is on that starter, that messy problem, that authentic problem that you're starting the students with. There's more guided milestones and processes within the project-based learning. You may want your students to follow a certain learning path on their project, and that's really falls under project-based learning. Problem-based learning is more the students can explore different avenues of learning based on what they need to know. So it's a little bit more student-driven as far as the process itself goes. And that changes the role of the teacher a little bit. The role of the teacher as a coach in project-based learning can set deadlines, can set check-ins, can really help focus working towards that project as a goal. And the role of the facilitator in problem-based learning is less about moving towards that finishing product and more about guiding them into as they're exploring their research questions. And the outcomes can be similar, actually. In the project-based learning, there'll be model, presentation, report, something like that. Problem-based will be a solution or analysis of a problem. It can be in a presentation or a product, actually. Something interesting about the origins of both of these terms is that the problem-based learning was really developed for medical students to practice in the field rather than just learning all their medical content through lectures. In Canada in the 1960s, I think Dr. Barrows thought let's give these medical students real world problems and fix them and have them fix them. So really it started in the medical field and has kind of bled over into the K-12 world. And in particular, more along the lines of project-based learning, which is really based in constructivism. And it started the term started coming around in the 70s and 80s for K-12 education. So it's interesting to think that the project-based learning, that the problem-based learning as a subset of project-based learning actually came before. So although it's technically, I just said that, it's technically a subset of problem-based learning, but was developed second. So here's an interesting visual about kind of what sets them apart, but also what they have in common. So really what you're talking about with your class is, are you doing project-based learning? Are you doing problem-based learning? It doesn't, defining it that clearly doesn't really matter to the students, to be honest. It's just, what are we focusing on with our projects in our classroom? We're going to focus on that problem at the beginning. We're going to focus more on the completion of the project at the end. And both of these really have more power with them when you're talking about real world problems, authentic, messy problems, connections to the greater world, specifically local connections, really make these projects go a little bit deeper into the content. And they all have the teacher as a guide instead of kind of a lecturer or a didactic presenter. So a lot of times we go to schools and teachers are working on what they call project-based learning, but really looking into it. Sometimes you're just doing a project at the end of your lesson, or it's just a project, and that's not necessarily project-based learning. So thinking about the difference between the two, I looked up this visual, which I found pretty fascinating. So at the top, this is what I like. I sometimes see it in classes, and this happens a lot. So they'll go through the learn it with their lecture, their quizzes, their activities, and then at the end they have a culminating project, which is great and fun for the students. Every time, students love projects. But looking at this bottom one, you'll see that the project is the whole unit instead of kind of tacked on to the end of the unit. So thinking about the project or the problem at the beginning of the unit and supporting students in their learning and maybe even making some benchmarks as a facilitator or coach in a project unit, are they going to need activities? Will they need a lecture here? Will they need a quiz here? Will they need some research here? So thinking about each step and what your students need to support each step. So really, it's not about content first and then project later. It's all together as we go. So really thinking about your role as a facilitator, just bringing the tools in to support the students in each step of their project-based learning. And then you'll notice that at the end of the project-based learning unit, there's typically a presentation and a reflection on the learning. And that's really important for the students to reflect on. And the presentation really kind of gives that finality to the project. This is our project, and what is helpful is also if that presentation can include real world stakeholders. Like, if this is a real problem and something that you can define in your community, maybe there's somebody that that your students can share their solutions with. If it's a local environmental club, or if it's a local politician, or even another teacher in the building that's having this problem that your project-based learning is affecting. It would be great for the students to be able to present their work in an authentic setting that really kind of clinches the whole project-based learning situation. Here's another visual I found, which is it a project or is it project-based learning? So kind of checking these off, whether or not what you're doing in your classroom is project or project-based learning. And I'll be the first to tell you, projects are awesome. Project-based learnings take a lot more time. So think about what is happening. Can it be done alone? What's the focus of the project? Is it about the process? Is it about the project itself? Who's directing this? Are we all following along and doing the same thing? Where's the context? Students definitely know what problem or project has a real world context and what problem or project doesn't, and it's quite obvious to them that they're just doing a project to demonstrate something. And specifically, the projects really occur after the real learning. So what I was talking about is the content happening first and then the project, or in the project-based learning where that content is really throughout the whole project. That's how we are learning. That's how we're mastering our content, is by participating in this project. And then, of course, if it's a project, kind of all projects will have some similarities and look similar at the end. They'll have the same goal. When you say to your class, today we're going to make a shadow box. So everybody will be making a shadow box. That's a project. But if you say to your class, let's reflect how elephants live in the wild and what their environment is like. And they could make a project. They could make a shadow box. They could, make a multi-PowerPoint presentation about how elephants live in their environment. They could create a stuffed toy with things marked on it. So there's a lot of different ways to present that type of same kind of content in a project-based learning. Whereas in a project, everyone's kind of doing the same thing, but they'll be doing it in their own way, hopefully. And then there's this kind of third thing, which isn't as prevalent in the literature, to be honest, as as project-based learning is. But it's one of my favorite things because it really defines where I feel like it's a really nice fit with digital fabrication in education. That's called design-based learning. So it's really another subset of project-based learning, but it's where the learning is really focused on that design and engineering, focused on the engineering cycle. So that's really the focus of the learning. The learning happens in that cycle. And this cycle can be easily done with digital fabrication, which is why I think it's a nice fit. And here I've shared another engineering design cycle. If you go back to module 1, where we talked about all the different engineering design cycles, there's a ton out there. This is just one, but whatever your engineering design cycle is, or the one that your school uses, or your favorite, or make up your own, really thinking about how the students are participating in that part of the project itself, and whether they are iterating and whether they're doing all of these steps in the engineering design process, specifically the ask, imagine, plan, create, really that kind of design phase part is where the learning occurs mostly in design-based learning.